Welcome to Smart Listening Lab, a channel for learning English through podcasts. Today, we are taking a deep dive into something absolutely crucial for anyone on the journey of learning English: building confidence. We've gathered insights, real-life stories, and practical strategies straight from the source material you shared with us. Our mission is simple: to help you unpack these resources and walk away feeling more comfortable, more capable, and, well, genuinely more confident when you communicate in English. We want to understand not just what helps, but the powerful why behind it.
And that understanding is fundamental. Confidence isn't just, a bonus in communication. It's really the engine. Especially for language learners, the goal isn't about achieving some impossible standard of perfection right away. Not at all. It's about finding the courage to step forward, to experiment, and to genuinely become okay with the fact that making mistakes is not just normal. It's an absolutely necessary part of learning. It really is about daring to try.
Okay, so let's unpack some of the core ideas that jump out immediately from the source material. One of the first, and I think most powerful points, is this idea of embracing imperfection. The source really highlights that even native speakers stumble, they pause, and yes, they make mistakes all the time. The true aim of language isn't error-free delivery, is it? It's successful communication.
Exactly. And what's powerful about starting there is that it instantly releases a huge amount of pressure. If you're not terrified of making a mistake because, well, everyone does it, you're much more likely to actually open your mouth and speak. Focusing on getting your message across, even if you have to use simpler words or, correct yourself, it's just so much more effective than staying silent out of fear. It's about progress, not perfection. That's the key.
That resonates really deeply. Another key insight is connecting your learning to your personal why. The sources emphasize linking your effort in English to something that truly matters to you. Maybe it's career stuff, travel dreams, family connections, or just personal growth.
Absolutely. Just thinking, oh, I should learn English. That often isn't enough fuel for the long haul, is it? But linking it to a core motivation, something that genuinely excites you or drives you, that taps into a much deeper reserve of energy and persistence. When things get challenging, and they inevitably will, remembering why this matters to you personally, that gives you the resilience you need to keep going. It grounds your effort in something meaningful.
And speaking of internal drivers, the concept that mindset matters is huge here. The sources talk about actively challenging that negative self-talk.
Oh.
We all experience those thoughts like, I'm not good enough, or I'll sound silly, maybe what's the point?
And what's fascinating is the direct, tangible link between those internal thoughts and your outward confidence. Negative self-talk isn't just, annoying, it's a genuine barrier. It can create a self-fulfilling prophecy. You become hesitant, maybe make more mistakes because you're nervous, and that just reinforces the negative thought. By consciously identifying those thoughts and replacing them, practicing, say, positive affirmations, you actively start to change that internal landscape. So instead of, oh, I messed up again, thinking, okay, that didn't go quite smoothly, but I'm trying, or maybe every time I speak, I'm improving, it's a shift.
Yeah, a crucial shift. The sources also point out how vital it is to recognize that small wins lead to big confidence. Celebrating those little victories, however minor they seem.
Oh, those small wins are absolutely vital. They aren't just insignificant moments, they are concrete proof that you are making progress. Successfully ordering a coffee in English, finally understanding a tricky phrase in a movie, having a 5-minute chat that felt awkward, but hey, you did it. Each of those is a little building block. They provide tangible evidence to yourself that your effort is paying off, which builds momentum and reinforces that you are capable. It becomes a positive cycle. Success breeds confidence, which encourages more effort, leading to more success.
It makes perfect sense. And the final foundational idea mentioned is that exposure is key. Immersing yourself in English as much as humanly possible, listening, watching, reading, even trying to think in the language.
Right. Increased exposure is like acclimatizing your brain to the language. The more you hear English used naturally in different contexts, the less foreign and intimidating it feels over time. It helps build that intuitive understanding of rhythm, common phrases, and, how language is actually used by real people. It moves English from being some academic subject to something that's just part of your environment. Makes it feel less like a hurdle.
More like something you can comfortably engage with.
Exactly.
Okay, those foundational ideas make so much sense on a personal, almost intuitive level. But what really solidified them for me in the source material was looking at the science and psychology behind it all. The source delves into what it calls the deeper dive, exploring principles that explain why these seemingly simple ideas actually work?
Yeah, this is where it gets really interesting, I think. First, there's the neuroscience of practice. The sources mention that every single time you produce English, even if it's imperfect, you are physically strengthening the neural pathways in your brain associated with language.
Right, through neuroplasticity, it's like you're literally building a faster, more efficient highway for English thoughts and words in your brain.
Precisely. You're not just learning abstract rules, you're physically rewiring your brain. The act of speaking, trying to recall words, structuring sentences, pronouncing sounds, that is the exercise that builds and strengthens those connections. And the actionable insight from this is incredibly powerful. Don't wait until you feel ready to speak. The act of speaking creates the readiness. Each attempt, every word, is literally helping build those necessary brain connections. It's like physical work for your brain.
Wow, thinking of it as physical construction in your brain, that's incredibly motivating. It also talks about the power of self-compassion and how we often are, kind of bizarrely, our own harshest critics when learning.
We really are, aren't we? The sources point to research showing that treating yourself with kindness and understanding, just like you would a good friend who's struggling with something, significantly reduces anxiety and it boosts resilience. Instead of getting stuck in that loop of self-criticism after a mistake, self-compassion lets you acknowledge it, learn from it, and move forward.
Yeah.
You don't carry that emotional baggage that just tanks confidence.
So the actionable side of this isn't just vaguely be nice to yourself, but specifically reframing those moments of error.
Precisely. It's a fundamental shift, moving from internal judgment, I'm so stupid, I can't do this, towards curiosity and growth. More like, okay, that didn't quite work. What can I try differently next time? It's constructive.
And that kind of internal environment you're describing, reducing judgment, managing anxiety, the sources link this directly to another fascinating idea, Stephen Krashen's effective filter hypothesis.
Yes, the affective filter. It's a really influential concept in language acquisition proposed by Stephen Krashen. He suggested that emotional factors like high anxiety, low motivation, or low self-confidence create a kind of mental block that's the affective filter.
So a high effective filter, it makes learning harder, blocks things.
Exactly. Imagine your brain has a kind of gatekeeper for new English information and attempts to produce language. When you're stressed, nervous, or feeling judged, that gatekeeper is super strict. It lets very little information through and makes it hard to access what you already know. But when that filter is low, when you feel comfortable, confident, motivated, the gatekeeper relaxes. Language input and output flow much more easily.
And confidence directly lowers that filter, makes you more receptive.
That's the connection. Confidence is basically the antidote to a high effective filter. The more comfortable and confident you feel, the lower that filter is, making your brain dramatically more receptive to learning and producing English. It literally makes your brain a more efficient language learning machine.
Okay, so the practical takeaway is focusing on creating a low-stress, enjoyable learning environment, both externally and, crucially, internally.
Absolutely. Choose learning materials you actually enjoy, practice with supportive people if you can, celebrate those small successes we talked about, forgive your mistakes. Anything that reduces that internal and external pressure helps keep that filter low, allowing learning to flow much more naturally.
The source also highlights the significant role of perceived control and autonomy in boosting learning confidence.
Feeling like you are in the driver's seat of your own learning journey is a massive confidence booster. It really is. When you have agency, when you get to choose what you learn about, maybe based on your interests and how you learn, when you practice it, taps into a fundamental psychological need for autonomy. You're not just passively receiving information, you're an active participant shaping your own path.
And the actionable part here could be simple things, like setting your own mini goals or deliberately choosing topics that genuinely interest you.
Exactly. Taking ownership, even in those small ways, makes the whole process feel empowering. And feeling empowered directly translates to feeling more capable and therefore more confident in your ability to navigate challenges and succeed.
Makes sense. Next, the sources really emphasize the crucial importance of output in active production, actually speaking and writing, not just consuming information. This is linked to the output hypothesis, right?
Right. Input, like listening and reading, is foundational. Of course, you need that. But producing language is where the magic really happens for solidifying learning and building fluency and confidence. When you force yourself to speak or write, you're pushing your brain in a completely different way than just understanding. You have to retrieve words, apply grammar rules, organize thoughts. It highlights what you do know, and crucially, what you don't know yet or are still unsure about.
It pushes your brain differently, as you said, identifying those specific gaps.
Precisely. And that effort involved in active output strengthens those neural connections we discussed earlier. It makes your knowledge more accessible for future use. The actionable insight here is simple, but admittedly can be challenging. Seek out opportunities to speak. Even if it's just talking to yourself in the mirror, recording voice notes describing your day, or trying to explain a simple concept out loud, every act of production builds confidence and refines your skills.
And finally, underpinning so much of this, the source material contrasts a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset.
This really is fundamental to, well, pretty much everything we've discussed. A fixed mindset believes abilities are innate, I'm just not good at languages.
Okay.
This leads to avoiding challenges because mistakes feel like proof of inadequacy. It's threatening. A growth mindset, however, understands that abilities can be developed through dedication, through effort, through practice. It says, I may not be good at this yet, but I can improve with hard work.
And that simple shift in perspective reframes everything.
Completely. It reframes mistakes not as failures, but as essential information signals about where to focus your effort. It sees challenge not as something to avoid, but as an opportunity to learn. And it sees effort as the path to mastery. The actionable insight here is consciously adopting that belief. Focus on your progress over time, celebrate the distance you've already come, and view every difficulty as a chance to learn and grow stronger.
That deep dive into the science and psychology really provides a robust foundation for those initial insights. It moves from these things seem to work to understanding why they work. Now, let's look at putting this into practice. The source shares some wonderful success stories that illustrate these principles in action.
These stories are so powerful because they show how real people navigate these exact challenges. There's Maria from Brazil, who was initially terrified of mispronunciation, the kind of fear that just makes you freeze up. She started really small, recording herself describing simple things just to get comfortable hearing her own voice in English. A tiny step. This micro step built her courage enough to join online conversation groups, where she learned, importantly, to laugh off mistakes. And now, she's confident enough to lead presentations in English. Her story perfectly embodies embracing imperfection, the power of small wins, and consistent output.
That feels incredibly relatable, that initial fear of sounding wrong. So many people feel that.
Absolutely. Then there's Kenji from Japan. He struggled particularly with keeping up in fast group conversations, feeling lost and intimidated. But he didn't just give up, he applied a really strategic approach. Before group calls, he'd prepare a few simple questions or points he wanted to make. Smart, right? And he focused intensely on active listening during the conversation. This tactical preparation and focus on both output and input, but in a manageable way, significantly reduced his anxiety. Eventually, it allowed him to feel comfortable jumping in and genuinely enjoying those vibrant discussions. He used perceived control and targeted output really effectively.
A very smart approach to tackling a specific, common challenge.
And Priya from India, who felt her accent made her self-conscious. Instead of trying to erase it or sound like someone else, she focused on clarity and articulation, embracing her identity while actively working on specific sounds and intonation. She used recording apps and worked with a tutor. Her confidence soared as she realized her accent wasn't a barrier at all, and she now speaks with incredible clarity and conviction. Her story really highlights self-compassion, embracing your identity, using targeted practice with technology, and putting in that deliberate effort.
These stories are genuinely inspiring and show the different paths people take. It's not one size fits all. And the source material wraps up with some fantastic pro tips for boosting confidence, which really serve as a concrete action plan based on everything we've discussed.
Yeah, these are practical strategies you can implement right away. First, start small and build up. Think micro conversations. Just a few sentences to order food, ask a quick question, very low stakes. Try mirror talk. Practice speaking aloud to yourself, just getting comfortable hearing your own voice producing English sounds. And shadowing, listening to a native speaker and trying to repeat exactly what they say, focusing on rhythm and intonation. These are low-pressure ways to start building that neuroscience highway we mentioned.
Practical ways to lower that effective filter right at the beginning.
Exactly. Then find your tribe. This is about connection. Connect with language exchange partners online or maybe locally. Join online conversation groups centered around your interests, hobbies, movies, anything. Or look for local English-speaking clubs or events if they're available. Practicing with others, especially in a supportive setting, is incredibly effective for building real-world confidence and keeping that filter nice and low.
Leveraging technology is another key strategy you mentioned from the source.
Yes, there are so many useful tools available now. Use voice recording apps on your phone, just the basic one is fine. Practice output and listen back. It can be surprising, sometimes even encouraging to hear how you actually sound, and it definitely helps you identify areas to work on. Pronunciation apps can offer targeted feedback on specific sounds, and AI language tutors can provide non-judgmental practice partners anytime, anywhere. Technology can be a powerful ally.
And the critical internal work we discussed, create a no-judgment zone.
This is vital. Actively choose to focus on communication, on getting your meaning across, rather than achieving perfect grammar every single time. Be brave enough to ask for clarification when you don't understand simple phrases like, could you repeat that? Or what does X mean? It shows engagement, not weakness, and constantly, consciously reframe those inevitable mistakes. See them not as failures, but as valuable information, your brain literally identifying where it needs to learn and strengthen connections. This is actively reducing that affective filter and building self-compassion.
Finally, the tip was immerse yourself actively, not just passively.
Right. Go beyond just having English on in the background while you do other things. Try to actually think in English during everyday activities. Narrate what you're doing in your head. Designate specific English-only periods for yourself, even if it's just 15 minutes to start. And when you consume English media articles, videos, podcasts like this one, do it actively. Try to summarize what you understood afterwards, maybe look up key vocabulary, or even try discussing it aloud or in writing with yourself or a partner. This builds both that crucial exposure and essential output simultaneously.
This whole deep dive really drives home the point that confidence in speaking English isn't some fixed trait you either have or you don't. It's something dynamic, something you build deliberately through consistent practice, through shifting your mindset, understanding how your brain learns, and taking practical, actionable steps.
Absolutely. The sources show clearly that these principles aren't just, feel-good ideas. They are actionable steps rooted in the psychology of how we learn and even the physical processes happening in your brain. And they can genuinely make a significant difference in how comfortable and capable you feel using English.
We really encourage you, the listener, to think about your own English learning journey after hearing this. Maybe identify just one small tip or insight from this deep dive that resonated with you and commit to trying it out this week. Just one small step. After all, if every single attempt to produce language, even imperfectly, is literally rewiring your brain for efficiency and mastery, what happens if you choose to see every mistake, not as a failure you should hide from, but as the brain actively identifying exactly where it needs to build a stronger connection? Thank you for joining us for this deep dive.
Thanks for tuning in. Keep practicing, and for more English lessons, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.